Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestling News 365. Hope everyone is doing very well. As always, there is a ton of news stories to get into, especially in the world of Impact Wrestling, and what a big story this is. It appears that former WWE Superstar, former Cruiserweight Champion Buddy Murphy is bound for Impact Wrestling. Now, earlier this week, Impact Wrestling's Executive Vice President Scott D'Amore appeared on Jade Chung's Twitch stream, where he may possibly have just spoiled Murphy's upcoming Impact debut. Now, Chung, D'Amore, George Iceman, and Josh Alexander were at a baseball game when Scott D'Amore said the following, quote, "Tune in this Thursday when Buddy Murphy premieres for Impact Wrestling." Now, that's not a slip of the tongue. That's not a little bit of a, oh, he means something else. That's not, joking or anything like that. That's a spoiler. I don't know if he knew that he was on Twitch at that period of time. They were at a baseball game. I don't know if he knew that she was live, if she was streaming or anything like that. It's a big story just to let slip, but maybe Scott D'Amore did just that. Maybe he did it on purpose. Maybe he did it so we're talking about it in videos like this. And then Thursday, Lord knows Impact have been struggling when it comes to the ratings recently. Maybe it's a case of trying to build up a bit of momentum, trying to build up a bit of buzz. We saw what happened with AEW recently when they leaked out some information, or the information leaked out when it came to CM Punk's impending AEW debut. Now, I'm not saying that Impact Wrestling is going to do over 1 million viewers on Thursday night. I think that's actually impossible. I'm not even sure 1 million people have access to Access TV. Nevertheless, it's a big deal, and it's certainly got a lot of Impact Wrestling fans and a lot of pro wrestling fans interested and excited for what this means for Impact Wrestling and Buddy Murphy going forward. Now, the crew hinted that Murphy's announcement will be made on Before the Impact on Access TV, which of course is the lead-in show for Impact Wrestling on Thursday nights. Iceman chimed in, said, quote, "We can't say nothing yet. I'm not allowed to give out any intel until BTI this Thursday on Access TV. Check it out." Murphy, of course, is now going by the name Buddy Matthews and has been releasing several videos on his YouTube channel. Those vignettes and videos have been hinting that he's been in prison for something like 7 or 8 years and he's going to be paroled and he's going to be let out soon. You don't know what you've let out or anything like that. Now, since Buddy Murphy won't actually be a free agent until August the 31st, it's very likely that Impact Wrestling will just announce his signing, but he won't actually appear on Impact Wrestling television until next week, once he's legally able to do so. Now, Murphy, of course, was released by WWE on June 2nd of this year, and Murphy has continued to count down his 90-day non-compete clause expiring with WWE. Now, if you've seen some pictures of Murphy, of course, on social media recently, you realize that this guy is ginormous right now. He's absolutely huge. He's in the best shape of his life. I don't think I've ever seen Buddy Murphy look this way. To be honest with you, Buddy Murphy had to slim down a lot when he was in WWE. Of course, he had to drop something ridiculous like 25, 30 pounds just to get in the Cruiserweight division to get a chance on the main roster. That's kind of the story of Buddy Murphy's career in pro wrestling and WWE, isn't it? Nevertheless, it's a massive win. It's a massive win, and it's a massive get for Impact. We spoke about it here on the channel a couple of times. Once Murphy did get released by WWE, he was one of the first names of that group in June. Even though there were massive names like Braun Strowman and Aleister Black, etc., he was one of those names. It was reported widely that several independent wrestling promotions had reached out to him. There were several independent wrestling promoters that were arguably, they were the most keen on signing Buddy Murphy for their show because, one, he was the most realistic, but two, they realized he had the most untapped potential because Braun Strowman's been a big star in WWE. Aleister Black's been a relatively big star in WWE, never to the heights that I think everyone and Aleister Black himself would have imagined, but the assumption was Aleister Black, he'll go to AEW. Braun Strowman, he'll either go back to WWE or he might just not stay in pro wrestling at all. He might go into movies or acting or back to strongman or bodybuilding or whatever. He can do really whatever he wants. Buddy Murphy was a guy that I think he's a pro wrestler's wrestler in the sense that everyone knows his ability. Everyone knows what he's capable in the ring. The matches we have seen him have on WWE television, whether it's against the likes of Aleister Black or Mustafa Ali when they were on 205 Live, or even Roman Reigns when they had their match on SmackDown in 2019, Daniel Bryan in their match in 2019 on SmackDown, or against Seth Rollins. Buddy Murphy's in-ring ability has never been in question. If anything, kind of one of the sort of humorous things that people have pointed out about Buddy Murphy on social media is kind of like he's an Australian Kenny Omega, which has always popped me. I always find that comparison quite funny, but I think that's because of, the V triggers and all that kind of stuff. But look, it's a massive signing for Impact because There is no doubt in my mind every single pro wrestling company out there is interested in Buddy Murphy right now. I have no doubts about that. I have no doubts that AEW would benefit and would want a Buddy Murphy on their roster and in their programming. I think given their expansion of adding Rampage and still putting on Dark and Dark Elevation and who knows what other programs in the future, of course they would want someone like Buddy Murphy on their roster. Buddy Murphy against the Kenny Omega. Again, it's Australian Kenny Omega versus real Kenny Omega. But Buddy Murphy also against, even CM Punk. Again, Bryan Danielson once he comes in. Members of like the Young Bucks or Hangman Page or Darby Allin. I mean, there's Jungle Boy. There is a million different names on the AEW roster, which of course you would want to see Buddy Murphy face off against. So Buddy Murphy, of course, probably has interest from AEW. He would fit Ring of Honor, the pure style back in the day. I don't know how attractive an offer Ring of Honor can really make him nowadays, or how attractive it really is to go to Ring of Honor unless you're going to become the world champion. No doubt they have talent there, but I think it's not as an attractive option as it used to be. Obviously, you've got other promotions as well. You've got MLW, who are a rising company. You've got the NWA, which, whilst their television, in my opinion, sucks, NWA Power is sometimes unwatchable. They are doing big things in the sense of they've got the NWA Empower All Women's pay-per-view coming up, which is generating buzz. They've also got the NWA 73rd Anniversary show coming up, which Ric Flair is going to be at as well. So there were options there as well. I think Buddy Murphy is so well suited to New Japan Pro Wrestling as well. That style, that physical style mixed in with this sort of dynamic. It's not high flying. It's like a mixture between strong style. It's this modern hybrid. It's this modern hybrid style of high energy, lots of striking, stiff. Maybe one too many knee slaps or leg slaps, or whatever you want to call it, but he fits that New Japan style perfectly, and I could see him doing great in a G1 kind of situation. Or I don't think he's a junior. I don't think he can compete in the best of the Super Juniors. But I mean, if you wanted to slim down again, maybe. Depends on if he could really slim down that much. But certainly he would fit that style. And I think that will be a factor of him if he does indeed sign with Impact Wrestling, will be in the same vein as the Good Brothers. That, look, if I'm going to sign with you, I still want to keep my options open. I want a clause in my contract to say I will work, and I can work for New Japan Pro Wrestling. I can take outside independent dates, and make no mistake about it, Impact Wrestling will give him that. I have no doubts in my mind that Impact Wrestling will give Buddy Murphy anything he wants because they realize it's a big deal. And I think the reason why maybe this might be the better move for Buddy Murphy is because if he goes into AEW, I don't want to say he gets lost in the shuffle because I don't think he does, but I think it's he knows what he's going into there, and he's going into an environment where there's a lot of people. It's a big roster, and there's a lot of people going into AEW right now. It's not just a case of him going onto a bloated roster. It's a case of him going in somewhere where we know people are going to arrive in the future, whether it's CM Punk, Bryan Danielson, maybe Adam Cole, Bray Wyatt, Ric Flair. That list is ongoing, and those names are going to continue to come into AEW throughout the year. And I think Buddy Murphy realizes, actually, look, if I go into AEW whilst all of those names are still coming in, how effective is my debut going to be? How do I make the most of myself? How do I generate the most buzz and the most attention on myself? That might not be showing up in AEW right now, considering the names that are about to come in or are coming in right now. And if he goes to Impact Wrestling, look, he'll go straight into that main event. If he doesn't, I think that's crazy. It's either the main event or he's wrestling Josh Alexander for the X Division Championship, and then they get to a point where they're in the main event anyway. Buddy Murphy at Impact Wrestling will be the world champion. I have no doubt in my mind about that. And then you start looking at the Impact roster and you say to yourself, okay, there's a couple of guys there that are main event guys, younger guys, and they can go, whether it is Josh Alexander, whether it is Buddy Murphy, whether it is Moose. That's a pretty solid foundation for Impact Wrestling to build on. And we know that Impact Wrestling desperately wanted Buddy Murphy because those reports have been out there for a while that Impact Wrestling desperately wants Buddy Murphy. We saw those reports, and it looks like Impact Wrestling may have just finally got their man, which if they have, it's a big deal. It's a big signing for Impact Wrestling. And obviously we'll have to wait and see tomorrow if he indeed does show up, or when I say show up, is announced that he has signed with Impact. But it's a massive deal, and it's a massive signing for Impact Wrestling. And I think if he does indeed go there, I do think it is the right move for him. I truly do. But we'll talk about it more if and when it's announced Thursday. But it would be certainly a big deal. Now, I wanted to touch on, I mentioned Kenny Omega when talking about Buddy Murphy, and we spoke about this previously, about Kenny Omega possibly being done in Impact Wrestling. We weren't sure about it, but it looks like it is official that Kenny Omega may indeed not be coming back to Impact Wrestling. Now, of course, Omega dropped the Impact World Championship to Christian Cage on the first premiere edition of Rampage, ending his reign at 110 days. Now, of course, Omega was not in action at Impact Wrestling's most recent set of television tapings, where the company filmed both Impact Emergence and Victory Road, along with several episodes of Impact on Access TV. Now, Dave Meltzer has also reported in the Wrestling Observer newsletter that Omega's commitments in Impact appeared to be over following him losing the championship. So, I still am not totally sold on Omega being done in Impact. I can still see a scenario where he wins back the Impact World Championship and comes back to Impact Wrestling. Again, I don't know if that's the plan or not. If it's not, it would be slightly disappointing, honestly, because whilst I totally respect Christian Cage and I admire his comeback, and his comeback's been amazing, and the fact that he's been able to be out of the ring for 7 years, like CM Punk, and come back and just be like nothing's happened and still be incredible and winning world championships and main eventing TV specials and pay-per-views for All Out, beating Kenny Omega is far more valuable to an Impact wrestler than beating Christian Cage. It just is. That is fundamentally the issue there. If Josh Alexander defeats Christian Cage at, say, Bound for Glory to win the Impact World Championship, that's a big deal. He becomes Impact World Champion for the first time. He beats someone like Christian Cage, well done. But if he beats Kenny Omega in the main event of Bound for Glory, that's a far bigger deal in terms of making yourself feel like a bigger deal, making yourself feel like a superstar. He was the guy to beat Kenny Omega. That's a big deal. Kenny Omega is one of the best pro wrestlers in the world right now. Now, arguably, maybe Christian Cage has a wider name. More people know Christian Cage is from his time in WWE, but in reality, beating a Kenny Omega in their prime is far more valuable to Impact Wrestling than beating a Christian Cage who arguably is past his prime. So if that is the case that Omega's done, it would be slightly disappointing considering the amount of time that has been put in to Omega as the Impact World Champion. Either way, whoever beats Christian Cage still beats a widely known and established star to be the Impact World Champion. I just don't know if it's as effective as having an Impact star like a Moose or like a Josh Alexander defeat a Kenny Omega. But maybe that's the situation going forward. But I think that's interesting. Again, I'm not totally sold on that. We haven't seen Omega once again in Impact. I do think we will see him again, but time will tell on that one. As of right now, doesn't look like Omega is coming back. Now, I mentioned this previously when we spoke about it in terms of spoilers, but it has officially been announced because Christian Cage has retired the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. This happened last week on Impact Wrestling. Now, a new era of Impact Wrestling is upon us. Christian Cage returned to the Impact Zone for the first time in 9 years last week when he unified the Impact and TNA World Heavyweight Championships in his possession. After soaking up the adulation for the fans inside the Impact Zone, Cage said he was back in Impact to look to the future rather than dwell on the past, and he made the decision to retire the TNA World Heavyweight Championship bout and will only carry the Impact World Championship going forward. This is, of course, why he only had the Impact World Championship at Impact Emergence. Now, the TNA World Heavyweight Championship was brought back, as I mentioned previously, by Moose in 2020. He declared himself the TNA World Heavyweight Champion at Impact Rebellion in 2020. The plan was to have him win that in a King of the Mountain match at an event that was going to be called TNA There's No Place Like Home on WrestleMania weekend in 2020. Of course, the pandemic changed everything in the world of pro wrestling. This was just another thing that it changed. So the TNA World Heavyweight Championship bout has now been officially retired. We spoke about this at depth previously here on the channel, so I don't really want to cover it too much again because it's just the same opinion, really. But I know some people were slightly upset by this, but the TNA World Heavyweight title was never designed to come back to be a world championship. The TNA World Heavyweight Championship, and I know people will hate this because it sounds like a Vince Russoism, but the TNA World Heavyweight Championship was brought back as a prop to get Moose over. It was meant to establish Moose. It was meant to give Moose some credibility and eventually have Moose become a world champion without winning the Impact World Championship. I always thought the end goal was for Moose to unify those championships, but maybe it was, but plans have obviously changed. I think for what it's worth and how it was done, I don't think you could ask for much more from the TNA World Heavyweight Championship because its legacy now is obviously it's the people that have held it in the past, your Kurt Angles, your Stings, etc., etc., etc. But in this recent history, in this recent return to Impact Wrestling television, it absolutely served its purpose. It absolutely served its purpose in that it really helped Moose go to the next level. And prior to him losing it, when it was unified with the Impact World Championship with Rich Swann at Sacrifice earlier this year, I would argue that Moose felt more like a bigger star than he ever has. He's doing his best work right now. He's in the best physical shape of his life. Promos probably still need a bit of work, but he's certainly rising, and he's certainly on the rise in Impact Wrestling. And arguably, since he dropped the TNA World Heavyweight Championship to Rich Swann, he had the match against Kenny Omega at Against All Odds, which was very good. But since then, his booking's just been bizarre. Very, very bizarre. But it definitely served the purpose of getting Moose to the next level. And at this point, there is no use for it. There is no use for it. It's just, if you don't follow Impact, which I'm sure a lot of AEW people don't, when they see it on TNT, they're like, why is he carrying around the TNA World Heavyweight title? And, they don't really know the story of Moose carrying it, and then Moose dropping it to Rich Swann, and then it became unified, and then Rich Swann dropping the championship to Kenny Omega. It's very long. It's very long, and I think it's just, it was time. It was time. So I don't think it was the wrong decision at all, to be honest with you. Of course, if you follow the channel, we did a watch-along for Impact Emergence at the weekend, and at Impact Emergence, we saw that Ace Austin is now the new #1 contender to the Impact World Championship. Austin successfully defeated Moose, Chris Sabin, and Sami Callihan in a four-way match at Impact Emergence. He will receive the opportunity to face Christian Cage for the championship at Victory Road on Saturday, September 18, which of course we will be doing a watch-along for and a post-show. Austin won the match by stacking up a very distracted Moose, who was dealing with Sami Callihan on the outside. He actually got a chair shot to the head as well. Again, Moose takes the pinfall, which is just the continuation of this bizarre booking when it comes to Moose. Moose was potentially one of the hottest free agents going. He had interest from WWE and AEW for that matter. Re-signed with Impact, which at the time I was like, that is a massive win. Talk about massive wins when it comes to Buddy Murphy possibly signing with Impact. I was like, that's a massive win for Impact Wrestling. And since then, he just keeps losing. And this was another case. But I'm very happy to see Ace Austin become the #1 contender for the Impact World Championship. I think I've mentioned before, I wish it was Ace Austin versus Kenny Omega. I think that would be a better match, and I think it would be a more meaningful match for Ace Austin, to be honest with you. Nevertheless, I am very happy to see Austin back in that main event championship picture. That's what this whole Impact World Championship AEW experiment needs to be. Same with Kenny Omega, same with Christian Cage. Whilst Ace Austin probably isn't going to win the Impact World Championship against Christian Cage, in the same vein that he wouldn't have won it if he faced Kenny Omega, having that match against an established star, against a big star, against an AEW star, gets them over by association, gets them over just by having the match, putting them in that spotlight. Again, I would have rather this would have been Ace Austin versus Kenny Omega. It's not. It's going to be Ace Austin versus Christian Cage. Irrespective of that, it's going to be a very good match. I have no doubt about that, and I'm excited to see it. I am very excited to see it. I think Ace Austin at some point will be Impact World Champion. I think he still has 2 years or 18 months left on his deal. He came very close at Slammiversary last year, and I think there was discussion about putting the title on him, making him the youngest Impact World Champion in company history, erasing Tessa Blanchard's previous record. Obviously, they didn't go down that avenue in the end. But we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see what happens at Victory Road. I don't suspect that Christian Cage will drop the championship. I think he'll drop it at Bound for Glory in October, and I think he'll drop it to Josh Alexander. That's still my feeling, and I think that's still the direction they're going to go. I don't know. I don't think they've had tapings that have really revealed anything in terms of the direction for Bound for Glory just as yet, but I think that's where we're going. I think it's going to be Christian Cage versus Josh Alexander in the main event. Finally, we have an update on the Impact Wrestling ratings from last week, and here's some good news because they are up slightly with the return of Christian Cage. The Emergence Go Home edition of Impact drew 126,000 viewers on Access TV, according to Nielsen via Showbuzz Daily. This is up just over 3% from last week's 122,000 viewers on Access TV. The episode drew a 0.04 rating in the 18 to 49 key demographic, which is even from last week's demo rating and even from the week before as well. Impact ranked 122 in the cable top 150 for the key demo. This is Impact's best audience since the June 3rd episode. As I mentioned, the viewership was just up over 3%. So I think they'll be happy with this, but in the grand scheme of things, like I said, it's still not what they're looking for in comparison to earlier this year. Earlier this year, January time, February time, they were getting 180,000, a bit more than that. They are still miles off that in terms of Impact numbers. I know 60,000 for WWE AEW isn't that big of a number. In terms of Impact numbers, that's a big number. So whether or not we're going to have some bump, maybe with Buddy Murphy coming in, that might help things. And again, maybe that's why they leaked it out. Time will only tell, but they will be happy to see some numbers go up, I guess, as well. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these Impact Wrestling news stories we've spoken about today? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community. Drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Get the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today, and I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.